Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I see a few more noses than last week. Welcome. It's the second week of the course Good Governance, subtitle The Legal Aspects of Regulated Industrial Safety. And all those words, let's say the essence of the course is captured. Today we will move to the topic of the steering and the rowing. We will look at the concept of regulatory state. We will look at the assignment that was on the slides and in the instructions of last week as a sort of preparatory work on multi-level governance. To get our heads around it, we will have a break after a while, and the slides are on Blackboard. I am in a course myself to develop online modules, as I mentioned last week, but for those who didn't hear that, that's the reason why I record myself, and hopefully today the machine will work better than last time, also in terms of the battery, and my ambition is to upload that on an online environment, either Blackboard or another website where you could have access. I have a question, and that is that all the literature is available on internet, and you can access that via the links provided. But I do have a tool, and that is that I can make a booklet in which the mandatory and recommended literature is included. And before I make such a booklet, which you can use then as preparation and keep in your library, and then the cost would be something like 19 euro, 21 euro, so a couple of euros more than if you print it yourself here in the building, but then you can keep it for the rest of your life. Would there be any interest in such a thing? And that would then take sort of 10 days between now and then it is available on the web shop. Or are you completely used to learn from the screen and online sources? Yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that type of price range? That is then that I limit it to sort of the 10,000 words per item, then copyright has to be paid. And I can also include the whole articles, and then we have to pay the author for the copyrights. And then it's maybe 35 euros. So maybe then the interest is 50%. Okay, let me see what I can do and how it works. Okay, well, the intended learning outcome, these sort of brackets indicated as the slide of last week, they are your checklist. And after today, the bold printed words should be on your radar. And in the reading you do, and the listening you do, and the thinking you do, please make sure that you hit those keywords. So those are the keywords that you can expect in the exam to be at stake, where you then are invited to write on, in the broader sense of the word, to reflect on, and to show off to me that you are, that you have taken the first step from a scholarly academic point of view in thinking this through, this topic of the legal aspects of regulated industrial safety. And today we zoom in on this regulatory state. And we ask the question today, what type of animal is a regulatory state? Last week we did an exercise on what goods do we think should not fail, to get a sense of the idea of market failure. And we also looked at the leading question. The leading question as in what type of mechanisms, what type of organs, what type of role division could we see in the current reality And do we wish in a future reality, which is partly shaped by you as a future professional? And then that those organs and officers and institutions look at the quality of products, services and market behavior. And the question, how could we develop rules for such a quality that can be implemented? Because a rule like make everybody happy and the rule all goods and services should be of superb quality is a rule that you cannot implement. Where can you start? So the task in our discipline and in your discipline is how can we make it concrete. And we had a little intermezzo on when we talk about professions, when we talk about me as an attorney at law and legal scholar, and when we talk about you as a safety and security manager, let's put it that way, what are we talking about? And I threw some icons at you, and these are, as far as I'm concerned, the four key icons. That is that we are either employed as a professional by the industry, the businesses, or we are employed by the government. And those are not necessarily friends. There's a sort of natural organic tension between the two. And on a larger scale, there's no tension, obviously, because they are all parts of a society and we all should work together. So that's more the sort of soft side of it. Let's say on the work floor, there's a tension. And then the type of product we look at is not necessarily the advice or convincing the other party, but the regulation. So the sort of the conclusion of the debate, as in how do we design it? On what can we agree on the state level and on the company level? And then we zoom in on industrial safety. And we try to keep out, let's say, other behavior in society that we label as criminal. Murdering, money laundering, sort of hybrid category. So we look at the quality of food, of drugs, of water, of electricity. We look at, let's say, the appropriateness of services like telecommunication, transportation by train, education, healthcare. So these types of services, services as intangible economic values. And we look at market behavior of the companies. How do they advertise? How do they sell it to you? What type of information do they provide you on the labels of the products or on their websites? How do they seduce you into the deals? And then we have to realize that when you talk about markets, that the majority of people in societies do not have a higher education like you have. So their brain power is less developed than you. And even you are trapped and you buy stuff that you know is sort of in a rather strange price quality balance. And so even you purchase Gucci bags for 300 euros, where you can carry a object in an Albert Heijn bag of 25 cents. And so when you look at a bag as a utility tool. And so there's this fascinating thing in a market, goods and services, where you are, as a consumer, easily seduced. And in this course, we do not regard a Gucci bag or a Samsung or Apple smartphone of 800 euros as a market failure. There's sort of market for that, as long as there are also bags for 25 cents or phones for 50 euros. We do look at exploding phones or electrical equipment in your house that is poorly constructed and sets fire. We look at the design of cars, or we look at the substances in foods. And we did so in a grand theory. And the grand theory was presented to you last week as a sort of lean back, relax version, and I promised to move each week to a next chapter of this 8 windows graphically. And today we move to window number 2, being public choices and private choices. We look at the question, if there's such a thing as market failure, how do we approach that? So, chapter or window number 2 today, a little bit number 3 and 4. So each week we progress and we look a little bit forward. Let's move to the assignment. And let's take a moment to exchange our findings so far. So who could give me a hint of what was written by yourself in relation to the question, what is multi-level governance? And that's a nice excuse to discuss together what do we mean with governance and what do we mean with multi-level. And those are 2 key, let's say, features and topics that throughout all the windows, throughout the weeks, are on our agenda. So, the lady with a laptop and a phone.
Sorry.
What are your findings on this leading question?
Well, to be honest, I actually wasn't there for the first class, so I was just going to pay attention now and find out a little bit.
Cool. The leading question is on the slide, also for next week.
Okay.
With the idea that if you read anything, it's hopefully the slide. So that's a nice location. It is a little bit on purpose to invite you, within your own ambition, to catch up, to try to catch up. Because that is worthwhile. Because ultimately you start to like it. Especially with the law school students, after surviving this course and progressing in a program and ending up in jobs like this. They tell me, wow, Mr. Van Bennett, it really exists. People talk about this in businesses and in government. And the good news for you is it's rather messy outside. It's rather unorganized outside. And you are invited to help change it. Well, let's not make this an exercise in who did the homework and who did not. So, who can contribute in this text? Maybe we start with governance. Yes?
Can I add something? There's both articles that didn't encounter term like multi-level governance.
Okay.
So maybe you could reframe the question a little bit.
I could. But let's yeah. One of the articles has as title multi-level in a way, but this is not a sort of exercise to necessarily only test whether you did the reading, but it's sort of autonomous question. Yes.
Well, multi-level, I believe it refers that there are responsible people for the public sector, responsible people for the private sector, and then there are people who control both, control the lower levels.
In a hierarchy.
Yes.
Okay. Let's collect some fingers already and then progress. Yes. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Maybe there's
Oh no, hold on. Sorry. Over here.
Multi-level governance, this is the governing of areas through various governments in a hierarchy working together. An example of this would be the European Union.
Okay. Can you break that sentence in pieces? Because I hear a few intriguing and important keywords.
This is the governing of areas, basically, through various governments in a hierarchy.
So, various governments. So, what do you mean with various governments? Because that is an important aspect.
For example, the Netherlands working together with Germany, France, England, or Italy, Bulgaria.
So, multiple governments as in a horizontal relationship of sovereign states. Yeah?
And vertical relationship in a hierarchy. For example, they go from the top level, which is some of the European Union, and then go down to local areas.
So which layers do you distinguish if you take that vertical line?
Like a equal ground amongst all countries, then within the countries themselves.
And could you name a few, just as an example?
Regional, national.
Yes, it's a supranational. So in concrete terms, so we have the EU level.
Yes.
And then we have the member state level, and then you say something intriguing about those member states. And so most member states are having multiple government layers, and my question is, what are examples of that? Ministries, so indeed you have a state, which is sort of abstraction, a legal person, and then you have sort of organs, and branches and departments of a state, at least on a sort of state level, and then ministries is an important one, and then you have different ones who could work together or also not work together. I was in a meeting earlier today, and one of the topics was what's strange and frustrating that ministries are not working together, where they are related in terms of the topic. But what else in a vertical line?
I can argue that it's not hierarchy. There is no hierarchical structure because there is a negotiation between all the stakeholders, so there is no hierarchy. And nowadays we can see that the private sector maybe is more powerful than the national sector of regulation or something like that.
Allow me to say that we come to that point, of those 2 points, important points, but we first need to know a little bit more what we mean with those layers. And so you mentioned regional, if you have to make it concrete, and everybody can assist. And so what regional layers of government do we have in the average member state?
Probably municipality.
So municipalities?
And provinces.
Provinces? Or as they are called in among others, Germany, they're called states.
Or in Switzerland they were.
Or canton in Switzerland. And so the beauty of focusing on the EU is that we do not have to deal with Switzerland, but that is, in terms of governance of markets, not true, because half of the headquarters are in Switzerland, the other half here in the Netherlands. And so they do play a big role. So cantons, states, provinces, and very importantly, municipalities. And why do we call it a sort of layer of the state? What makes them almost sort of independent type of phenomena?
Because each layer has own interest in the policy that it's...
So they have their own interest? And what else?
Income.
Indeed. And so they have the authority to generate their own income with taxes on these various levels. And income means a certain amount of autonomy, isn't it?
Yes.
And yeah?
Every area also votes, and every area also has a different result, so that snowball effects into the European Union.
So there are democratic processes on each layer. We could even make a choice and say, let's only talk about layers that have some form of democratic mechanism, local election, provincial election, member state election, European election. So those are then already 4 layers. And what else can we say on those layers? And maybe we try to tie it in to market failure.
They are dependent on each other.
They're dependent. So in what sense are?
Well, for example, the EU cannot exist without the states, and the states cannot exist without the municipality. So if one of them fails, it will be like in the forest. If one tree falls, other will fall.
So they are tied to each other through sort of factual dependency, because there's no EU territory. Like in Brazil or in the US, that you have a sort of District of Columbia or sort of federal district, but we don't have that in the EU. And so the EU is a concept of Poland, and there are no Dutch citizens. There are citizens that are registered in the Hague Persons Register and in the Delft Register. So those are intriguing sort of diagonal views on reality. Let's move to whether we can tie those layers to aspects of market regulation or market failure.
Well, probably you would have market failure if the EU would have ultimate power.
Sure, that is, let's say, the most extreme macro perspective. Well, what I would like to zoom in right now is the sort of micro perspective. Let's make it more concrete in terms of a municipality. What are types of market failure that are on the level of a municipality?
Maybe a policy that just not proper for the people who live in the municipality.
And what type of goods and services could be of the concern of a municipality?
Maybe wrong working time, not proper working time when the people can go to the municipality.
Labor, potentially. Yeah, let's collect some questions, and then basically this is an exercise layers do when they meet around the table. And the leading question is, which layer is best appropriate or best fit to take care of this? In the technical term in EU language is subsidiarity principle. You met that in quarter 1, I believe. And so if the question would be that the European Union should run the Hague University, and then maybe everybody raises the finger that maybe that's not